Welcome to the WanderLearn podcast. I'm your host, Francis Tapon, where we explore travel, technology, and transformation. In this week's episode, we'll be interviewing Bahman. Bahman is from Iran, and he has lived both in West Africa and East Africa, specifically Nigeria and Tanzania. I ask him, why did he get attracted to Nigeria in the first place? What made him go out there? What shocked him when he first arrived there? What about how do they compare the two countries between Tanzania and Nigeria? Are they similar? Are they different? If so, how are they different? And how are they similar? What does he love most about Nigeria? How did they raise the children? How is it different? Do they have other myths that he would like to dispel about Nigeria? What shocked him when he came to Tanzania? What about the pace of life? What keeps him coming back to Africa? And what are the skill sets that you need to have in order to live and work in Africa? Where would he like to go next after having spent so much time in both of these countries? So these are some of the questions I have. He has a fascinating perspective. It's just a 30-minute episode. Tune in and listen and maybe learn a few things about East and West Africa. Welcome to the WanderLearn podcast. This is Francis Tapon, and today I have Bahman Keramati, who is from Iran, but he's spent quite a bit of his life in Africa. He's been in Nigeria as well as Tanzania, and Lagos as well as Dar es Salaam. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks Francis. So it's been more than 10 years for me being in Africa. So to introduce myself, my name is Bahman Keramati. I'm Iranian, born in 1980 in Tehran. So I finished my university and I got my bachelor degree in 2006. And immediately after graduation, I moved to Africa. I moved to Nigeria in 2007, in the late 2006, and then I started my professional career in Africa. So since then, I've been in Africa. Spent 6 years in Nigeria, basically in West Africa, and then I moved back to in Iran for 2 years. I stayed there, and then again I moved to Tanzania. So it's been more than 2 years. Is approximately 3 years that I've been in Tanzania.
And right now we are at some beach that's, I don't even know the name of this beach, but it's really spectacular. It's about maybe an hour away from Dar es Salaam, the big city of Tanzania. What's the name of this beach here?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the beach, but this area called South Beach, and where we are sitting right now, it's kind of private beach. So it's you may in Changani Beach Resort. So it's a private beach, but very nice, as you said.
Yeah, so if you hear a little bit of wind in the background, then you'll understand why. So, okay, so tell us, first of all, why did you pick Lagos? Why did you end up in Nigeria? And then later on, we're going to get into the whole conversation of like comparing the two, because a lot of times people have this impression that all Africans are the same. And while they share a lot of things in common, there are certainly some differences on a macro level, in other words, West Africa versus East Africa, as well as a micro level, in other words, a Nigerian or somebody from Lagos, really, compared to somebody from Dar es Salaam. So we're going to get into all that in this episode, but let's start off with why you decided to go to what attracted you to Nigeria in the first place, because I assume that in Iran, the reputation of Nigeria is about as fantastic as it is in the rest of the world. In other words, Nigeria's reputation is pretty bad worldwide. Is that right, or am I wrong, or is it seen as some sort of mecca?
Yeah, thanks. So to answer your question, so the first question, how I end up being in Nigeria. So the thing is, I didn't get many options. So upon my graduation, I was offered the position in Nigeria. So there were no any other choices for me. And the thing is, at that time, I never had an idea about the Nigeria and even Africa. At that time, I couldn't imagine myself to be in Africa. So it was totally totally exciting, and it was something that I never expected. So I took the offer, and then I moved to Nigeria. I mean, despite of I mean not having any, despite of having a very basic information about the Africa. So
Hold on. So let me ask you a little bit about the reputation, though. I mean, you made it sound like Nigeria didn't have, you had no impression of Africa or Nigeria. You really didn't know much about it. So basically, you're saying that in Iran, people just don't know much about Africa at all, or do they have a negative image of Nigeria, a positive image?
yeah, from my own point of view, I mean, the only picture that I had from Nigeria was the football team of the Nigeria. So if I mean, whenever I wanted to remind of Nigeria, so I would have recalled the Nigeria football team. But this is not the general case for all the Iranians. But I mean, majority of Iranian, I mean, yes, they know. I mean, Europe, they know. I mean, America. I mean, North or South America, Asia, but they are not much into, I mean, Africa. So I mean, not many Iranian they know about Africa, and even I mean even some of them. I mean, it's happened to me that some people even ask me that, I mean, Africa, where is the capital? So that shows that the level of, I mean, knowledge of the geography within Iranian in regarding Africa, so it's not that much. So when there is no such understanding among Iranian in terms of Africa, there wouldn't be any perception of Africa. I mean, either, I mean, it's going to be difficult for them to, I mean, to judge about Nigeria or Tanzania or Cameroon, whatever country in Africa. So many of them, I mean, many Iranian, they don't have much knowledge, or they are not much into knowing about Africa. And the thing is, many Iranian, I mean, there isn't that because there are many Iranian that are trying to migrate to other countries, but they don't see Africa as one of the destinations. So that's why, I mean, if you ask them about the foreign countries, so they may be more knowledgeable in, I mean, regarding Europe, Australia, I mean, US, but I mean, in Africa, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, our people are very much into getting to know about Africa.
Okay, and then when you first got here, was there something that kind of shocked you when you first arrived? In other words, it sounds like you didn't have much expectation, so maybe nothing shocked you.
Yeah, the thing is, what I shocked at the beginning, I mean, it was, I mean, I traveled through Emirates. So I mean, while I was in the plane, so I mean, I could understand the cabin crew. I mean, so I could communicate with them. But what I shocked and what I realized as soon as I landed to Nigeria, it was the language. It was a totally different English. So it took me quite a lot of time to get to use that kind of accent. So it was the basic. Then I start, I mean, understanding. So I mean, at the beginning, it was very difficult for me to recognize, I mean, the black African. I mean, so I took them all out the same. So I couldn't recognize, I mean, if our security guard or, I mean, our cook or whatever. So, but I mean, gradually I start, I mean, recognizing. Gradually I start to see pretty girls and handsome, I mean, boys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you got there, what was your assignment? Because you said you were fortunate and you got this offer, but I'm still not clear what you were actually doing there for those 6 years, I think, that you spent there.
Yeah. So basically there was an Iranian company that they got a project in Nigeria. So I moved there as a project engineer for the same project. So we had the project in southeast of Nigeria.
What was the project?
It was a transmission line. It was for power sector project. So it was a substation and transmission lines.
This is the paradox about Nigeria, is that they have so much power, energy, especially not just solar energy, but of course that hits their land. But of course their petroleum reserves are huge, and yet they have no electricity most places, and they have so much power cuts. It's incredible. How do you resolve that paradox?
Yeah, that's a very correct observation. The thing is, I mean, Nigeria is big. I mean, in terms of population, so they are almost 200 million population, and they're really struggling to develop the level of the electricity generation. So it's a big problem there, and so at that time there were many companies, that they were doing the same things that we used to do. But the thing is, many of these projects, because of the level of the corruption that, yeah, that which is still exists in Nigeria. So many of them, they didn't, they didn't end up, to be commissioned. So there are many uncompleted projects. So which is affecting the people.
Okay, and then what did you kind of learn eventually that took you a while to figure out about Nigerians, that took you, let's say, several weeks or months or even years to figure out, that was not obvious when you first got there?
Yeah. So what I realized after a year being in Nigeria, I understood that in Nigeria, but later on I realized that that's the same case in all African countries. Except very few of them, that you need to be patient. So if you are impatient, then you cannot survive. So the thing is, you need to be patient, and you need to understand the culture they have in Africa, and you need to. So you cannot. You should try to correct people, but you should not bother yourself much. So you better try to adopt yourself than correcting others.
And then we experienced that today. For example, we ordered a boat. It was supposed to come at 11. Then they told us before noon, and then it showed up at 1 p.m.
Yeah, that's great. That's part of the culture. As you said, there are different. So the timing is part of the culture. So when they say certain time, so they may not really mean that they're gonna do it at that particular time.
And that's a Pan-African trait, you're saying, basically. You've been to how many African countries approximately?
Yeah, I can like 6 countries.
Okay.
Yeah.
And most of them were in West Africa? Or half and half?
I would say some in West Africa, East Africa, in Southern Africa.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so what other things besides the time insensitivity, or at least the need for you to have patience, what else did you kind of learn after years of living there?
Yeah, so another issue that another understanding or another lesson that I learned for living in Nigeria was that so it makes me to comprehend the level of the development that we have in our own country, and the security issue that and the peace that we have in Iran, that we are experiencing in Iran. So those are things that people are not are really missing in many African countries. So the issue of the security, safety, an adequate level of infrastructure. So these are things that are missing in many African countries. But in Iran is very is very normal. When you get up in the morning and you get everything in order. You have your electricity, your water, your internet, everything is working. So you already have basic things. So
is that true though in the big just in Tehran and the big cities, or is it also true in the countryside?
Yeah, I would say in more than 90% of Iran, so you get the basic level of infrastructure. So by default, wherever you go, say about 90%. So by default you would easily get electricity, water, internet, telephones, and all this.
What did you love most about Iran? About Nigeria?
So I think the learning that it came out of the Nigeria, it was the thing that I really loved, because it's made me to understand the Africa, and it's paved the road for me to continue my life and my career in Africa. So Nigeria could be if you're gonna start a journey in Africa, then so the Nigeria might be the last country that you may want to visit, because it's really tough, and if you want to do business there, if you want to live there, so it made it easier for me to work and to live in Tanzania, because I've already seen the worst
Yeah.
So
But at the same time, I mean, I'm not sure if I completely agree with you, because the sense that when you're saying to do business there, it's really tough. At the same time, it's got the biggest market in Africa. It's got the biggest economy, 200 million people, biggest country. And so, as from a business perspective, it seems like there's few places in Africa that are better than Nigeria for giving you business opportunities.
yeah, I'm talking about the ease of doing business. Yeah, I mean there are a lot of resources. I mean there are a lot of opportunities in Nigeria, but the ease of doing business is very difficult. So I mean if you want to put in that context, then you would say, yeah, I mean Rwanda is, I mean they don't get that level of resources and all this, but I mean the ease of doing business is much more easier in, I mean I'm just giving you an example. So in Rwanda is much more easier. Yeah, but I mean the opportunity is vast. There are a lot of opportunities in Nigeria, but it's very tough and very competitive. So yeah.
Okay, so then I mean, now you have a little boy that you're raising. Did you notice how Nigerians would raise their children, or did you never get a chance to be that close to a Nigerian families and to see how Nigerian families raise their 2, 3, 4-year-old children?
Yeah, I mean there are I mean in Nigeria you get different I mean there are different type of people with different level of, I mean, incomes, and I mean different level of, I mean, within their own society. So there are different type of people. I mean there are wealthy people that they can really afford and they send their kids into very good schools, and at the same time there are poor people that, I mean, they cannot afford to send their kids to school. So I mean, yeah.
Help me understand one of the hugest paradoxes in Africa is Nigerians in general can be incredibly ambitious, super hardworking, real go-getters. When they pursue education, they want not just a master's, they want the PhD. They don't just want any PhD. It's got to be from Oxford or Harvard or, some of the best schools in the world. So there's this level of high achievement and hyper competitiveness that you would think would be wonderful elements to have to create a super powerful country like Switzerland or Japan. And yet it's a completely dysfunctional country on so many levels. Can you explain this paradox? Do you understand, or have you not figured it out either?
Yeah, I think the thing is, I mean, it take, I mean, not only Nigeria, but for the rest of the Africa, it takes time for them to understand and to learn how to manage their resources. So the thing is that Africa been aware of all these I mean development that been happening in the rest of the world. So I think for them is just go through the process. So I mean the Europe, I mean US, I mean America, I mean Asia, they have already gone through the process. So I think it's the same case with Africa. So it may take longer. Or I mean for sure it's going to take longer. Maybe it may take longer than what it takes what it took in America and in Europe. But I think it's part of the process. Yet they got a lot of resources, but is for them to learn how to manage resources and how to overcome all these corruptions and all this. Yeah, so is the issue of the process and the time. So they cannot jump, so they cannot bypass. So they need to pass through.
So you just think it's just an evolutionary step as you nation building. You just gotta suck it up and go through it, and that's what they're suffering through right now.
Yeah, that's my understanding, because I mean there are levels that you need to pass through in order to be to where US is or where the Europe is. I mean they never been like this. I mean back to 304 years ago. So they were also struggling. They were also, so I mean they passed through all the process. I mean so I guess it's the same. So people need to experience, people need to understand, people need to really appreciate things that they don't have. And once they work toward it, once they gain it, once they receive it, once they have it, then they would appreciate it, and then they may not want to go back to what they had before.
What's the biggest myth that you would like to dispel about Nigeria?
It's very difficult.
There's all sorts of, I mean, I understand in Iran there's not that much discussion about it, but in certainly Europe and certainly in America, if people know about Nigeria, they have all sorts of ideas, and you're going to get robbed, you're going to get stolen, and there's all a bunch of crooks and etc. So, do you think that there's certain myths behind that?
Yeah, what I would say is that the Nigerian is a great nation, but the thing is they just need to be aligned. I mean, it can go. I mean, it can get worse, and they can go in the wrong direction. But if they align, then they can really be the king of Africa.
Do you think that that's going to happen? Are you optimistic about that?
I cannot. The thing is, I mean, I don't see. I mean, since 10 years ago that I was in Nigeria, so if I don't see much improvement. So I don't see much changes in the way that they used to do things. So things still is going at the same way that they used to do it in 10 years ago. So maybe it's not the time for it.
Okay, maybe in the future then. So then you went off to Iran, you lived there for a couple of years, you got married, and then you came back to, in this case, came back to Africa, and you went to Dar es Salaam. Was it also just the opportunity, the job opportunity, and was it also in the energy field?
Yeah, it was the same. So I mean, because I already had my background in Africa, so there was another similar opportunity in Tanzania. Initially, I was offered another opportunity in Nigeria again for the same company, but later on I was told that the position is already filled. But they told me that there is a vacancy in Tanzania, which I accepted. Then I moved to Tanzania.
So what did you immediately see as differences that shocked you when you first arrived in Tanzania?
Yeah, so is Tanzania, I mean, I would say is totally different than Nigeria. I mean, because so the thing is, I mean, in Nigeria, Tanzania is more developed. I mean, let's say, comparing Dar es Salaam with, I would say with Lagos. So I mean, the lifestyle is much more better than Lagos. I mean, is much more cheaper than Lagos or Abuja, and so you can do more. You can socialize more in Dar es Salaam than Nigeria. So you see more. I mean, expatriate. I mean, roaming in the cities that you don't see these kind of things in Nigeria. Yeah, the issue of the security, I mean, is not in Nigeria, is a big thing in Nigeria, the security, but in Tanzania, I mean, you somehow feel secure. So it's much more manageable to stay with the family in Tanzania than in Nigeria. Yeah.
And then, what about the pace of life? Would you say that the Nigerians are far more hungry than the Tanzanians, or would you say that they're about the same?
I would say if we compare, the thing is, I mean, Nigeria, if we should compare it, I mean, we should compare apple with apple. I mean, Nigeria is 200 million country, so Tanzania is
200 million people.
Yeah. I'm sorry, 200 million people, and Tanzania is 50 million people. So then, I mean, it's going to be, it's not going to be a right, comparison to compare them.
Right. What I want to say is, let's compare big cities to big cities. In fact, one thing that both countries have in common is that their capital city is actually much smaller than their biggest city. In the case of Nigeria, it's Abuja is the capital, and Lagos is a big city. In Tanzania, the big city is Dar es Salaam. The capital is Dodoma. So let's compare big city with big city, Lagos and Dar es Salaam.
Yeah, then I would say, I mean, the level of the poverty that you may see in Lagos is much more higher than what you see in Dar es Salaam. So you don't see. I mean, there are many poor people that you see in Lagos that you may not see such a things in Dar es Salaam. Still, there are poor people in Dar es Salaam, but not the same level and the same stuff that you may see in Lagos.
Now, what keeps you coming back to Africa? Why don't you just say, "Oh, screw Africa! I'm just going to go off and go to Asia, or East Asia, or one of the Americas"? What why did you keep coming back?
Yeah. So for me, has a lot to do with my career and with my job. But the thing is, I've been in Africa since 10 years ago. So I take this, I mean, as my home. So I don't feel that I'm not living in home. So I don't take this that I'm living in overseas. So I don't get that feeling. But I'm okay. I mean, if I get a chance, I mean, to move to Asia, or I mean, so I mean, I don't mind, as long as, I mean, we can make a good life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And which country did you enjoy living in more so far? Would you say Dar es Salaam was, or Tanzania, more livable than Nigeria, or at least compared to the big cities?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Tanzania, as I said, and particularly Dar es Salaam is much more better than, I mean, Abuja. Abuja is kind of administrative city, so it's difficult to stay there with the family. So Lagos, I mean, is more manageable, but I mean, things are totally different in Tanzania. So the people are different. So I mean, and you feel more safer and more secure in Tanzania.
What kind of person, if should go to Africa or should consider going to Africa, what kind of skill sets or mentality would do well here in the continent? If somebody's listening to this and saying, hey, I don't know if I should go out there, and I've got a job offer, should I pursue this? What kind of skill set would you say is good, somebody would thrive and really enjoy it here?
I would say, for the people that they are fresh to Africa, so then Nigeria is going to be difficult for them to, if they want to do their own business, if they want to establish their own business. But if they go, as an employee, and if they are on a good pay, and if they're going to work for a good company, then I would say, it's good. If you want to make some saving, at the beginning of your career, so then Nigeria could be a good option.
I guess you would also recommend that they have a lot of patience.
Yeah. So that's something that the thing is that they should lower the level of the expectation. Things is not happening the way that is happening in other part of the world. So it's the matter of understanding the culture. So it's not the only of the patients. So there are many things that has to do with the culture, with the national culture of the Nigeria, that should be understood. So in order to make the life easier for the people, especially the expatriate, where they are living in Nigeria. Otherwise, you're gonna keep fighting with people. You're gonna get yourself angry for nothing, because not in Nigeria, in many African countries, things doesn't work as you expected. So you wake up in the morning and you don't get the basic things. You don't get your water, you don't get your electricity, you don't get your internet. So these are things that you get by default. And you don't need to fight for them. But in Africa, you need to fight for these basic things. So when it comes to the business, then it's gonna be more. People are gonna more. Struggle, because apart running your own business, you need to take care of the basic things on a daily basis. So which makes the business very difficult. So you need to understand these issues that you're gonna face. So you need to overcome the basic things. You need to be able to manage the basic things. Then you will reach to the stage that you're gonna now run your own business.
But it seems like there could be a lot of money to be made if you're willing to put up those fights.
Yeah, you may make a lot of money, but you may also lose a lot of money. So it depends. Is very much has to do with the individual. How smart they are in doing the business. And so there have been people that they have spent and invested a lot of money, and they end up with nothing. And yes, there are people who can be the sweet case, and they have their own company, their own business, and they have over hundreds of people, employees. So it works both ways. Yeah.
And so if you could live anywhere else in Africa, if you had another assignment and you could change, is there any top ones on the wish list there?
Yeah, if I mean within Africa context, I would say Tanzania. Yeah, I mean if I'm gonna be, I mean, working and living in Africa, then yeah, I would rather prefer to be in Tanzania.
But if you have another assignment, that would you pick South Africa, Namibia, or Algeria?
Yeah, if I'm given the option to choose, I mean, and Tanzania is one of the options, then I'm gonna go for Tanzania.
Wow, so you really do
Yeah.
really appreciate it here. Give us some more insight into the Tanzanian culture that you really love, or what makes you want to keep staying here. Because Dar es Salaam is, to me, I mean, it's a nice city, but it's just so hot. So I've got to really, really like a place to put up with the heat of Dar es Salaam. It's incredibly humid, 24/7, 365.
Yeah, the issue of the weather, we are somehow used to it, so it doesn't bother us much. One thing that I don't like much is, I mean, moving from one place to another, because I mean, when you start getting to know people, then I mean, and moving from one place to another, I mean, is gonna be, sometimes it's gonna be damaging to yourself and to your family. So I would rather to settle down somewhere. I mean, somewhere, I mean, in a good, I mean, or decent country. I mean, in Africa context, then it's gonna be, I mean, Tanzania, I think it's gonna be a good option. So sorry, what was the other question?
No, I'm just curious if you had, if you want to go somewhere else and travel as a visitor. Just curious, where is top, let's say, tourist destination? Forget about living, tourist. How about that?
In Africa?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I would say Tunisia, Morocco, Seychelles, Mauritius, Madagascar. Yeah.
Those are all very good choices. It's true. Well, I really appreciate your time today, and I wish you the best of luck here in Dar es Salaam and Tanzania, and for your family and everything.
Yeah, thanks, Francis, and I hope you will enjoy your stay in. You will enjoy your rest of your stay in Tanzania, and you will leave the Tanzania with the very good memories.
Thank you. And that concludes this week's episode of the WanderLearn podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Here at the WanderLearn podcast, we explore travel, technology, and transformation. And we can't do it without your help, and I'm just going to ask you for one simple favor. All you got to do is subscribe to this, share it with your friends, review it, and send me lots of money. How hard is that? Simple. Seriously, if you'd like to see the show notes for this episode and any other episode, go to WanderLearn.com. It's always listed to the most recent episodes are first. Find out where my shop is, and if you want to help out the show a little bit, buy something from my shop. If you want to sponsor the show, you can send me an email at ft@francistapon.com. That would be great. And finally, this show was edited by Rejoice Tapon, and the music was done by David Hamilton. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.